What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another Detroit Lions mock draft. Man, it is that month. It's draft month, and we're here with mock draft. I think it's 3.0. So let's get it started.
The Detroit Lions select Jameson Williams.
Welcome everybody to our video. Glad you guys are here, and man, we are back with another one of these things, and there's going to be a lot more of these to come. The pace is going to start to it's going to start to pick up, okay? We're going to have a lot more of these coming very quickly, but with that being said, this one did take a little bit longer again than I expected. They usually do. However, I wanted to get a little creative with this mock draft. So last mock draft, if you didn't see it, I don't want to spoil it, but we made a move in that mock draft, but it was nothing massive, so feel free to go check that one out. However, this one, I was like, you know what? I want to do a little bit more. I want to do a little bit more with this mock draft. Something that's really maybe a little bit off the wall. Not insane, but a little bit off the wall, a little bit crazy. And that's sort of what I did in today's video, but I think it makes it fun as that it is a mock draft. Right before the draft, like we did last year, we will put out a predictive mock draft where I'm just like, hey, here's who I think we're going to pick. And last year we got 2 right. Hopefully we get 3 right this season. That I do like, but at the same time to that, it's players that I think make sense for the Lions. I'm not trying to draft players that I'm like, I don't see the fit here for the Lions at all, but I like the guy. Like, there's a lot of players, and that's as I continue to learn about more players and go through all of these guys that I'm like, man, I like him, but I just don't know if I see the fit there, so I have to pass. And that's what's happened a few times because certain guys, I really like them. It's like, I just don't know if I see the fit, so I just don't take that play. One thing that I'm trying to do with these mock drafts, and eventually it's not going to happen, even there is a little bit of overlap in this one, but it's trying to give you guys different players, or I want to give you guys different names, especially with the first pick in the draft, okay? Especially with the 6th pick. I want to do videos and mock drafts on tons of different picks at number 6, just to try to go about it different ways, because there's a lot of ways the Lions can go about that pick, and we'll probably do ones where we move around from the 6th pick in the draft as well. Let's waste no more time, man. We're going to jump right into this. Trades are available. I can make trades, make moves. I do use the trade value chart, the draft value chart, to try to make it realistic as possible. But with that being said, man, this one's going to get a little bit crazy, so hang on. Let's do a Lions mock draft. Here we go. We're going to start off with the Lions' top pick in this year's draft at pick number 6. With the 6th pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select, I said we're going a different route this time, Tyree Wilson, defensive end, Texas Tech. Last video, we went a different route. I want to get a lot of different names in here at number 6 just because I don't know where the Lions are going to go at number 6, of course, and they could go a lot of different ways. So I think getting different names in force you to go different ways and approach the draft differently. Even though this year, again, the Lions have done so much in free agency over the last few years and what they currently have on the roster, it feels pretty open regardless of where you're at in the draft. And that's something that I've tried to stick to, is draft players that I really like. Okay, just as simple as that. I'm not trying to draft based on position. I'm really trying to put myself in the shoes of just draft guys that I really like. But the 6th pick can be a little bit different because I can kind of just take some of the guys that are projected to be like a top pick and put different names there just to mix it up a little bit. So with that being said, while this may not be my favorite prospect in the draft, I really do like him. Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech. Now, of course, this makes it an immediate, very nasty edge rusher duo for not only now, but also for the future. Considering Aiden Hutchinson's going to have a 5th-year option. He's only been in the league for 1 year. He was a dog like he was last season. And honestly, when I was watching some of these top edge rushers this year, just some of the top players in general, I'm like, man, we are so lucky that Aiden Hutchinson fell there at number 2, because the way that he came out so polished is much different from a lot of guys in this year's draft class. But with that being said, Tyree Wilson doesn't fall in as much of the polished category as Aiden Hutchinson did when he came out. We're talking about a transfer here from Texas A&M, but he has some different physical tools that separate him from Aiden Hutchinson when he came out. Aiden Hutchinson, terrific athlete, but Tyree Wilson, he is built different, literally. All right, the guy is measured in about 6'5.5", 270 pounds, and it looks like his frame could honestly add more weight to that. And his arm length is nearly 36 inches. Seriously, it's nearly 36 inches. He has a massive wingspan. It almost doesn't look right when he's standing out there on the edge. He's also given some flexibility to that Texas Tech defense because of his size. I think in the NFL, he can bring that as well immediately. But with that, I'm looking at him as, hey, he's going to start opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. It's going to be a nasty combination. With that, he can rotate a little bit year one. He can have flexibility on pass downs, so he can be out there, but he can play some different spots. He can kind of come in and out for us a little bit because of the amount of guys that we have on one-year deals at that position. Romeo Okwara, Charles Harris, Julian, I mean, the amount of guys that we have at that spot, and I'll kind of give you a look at the Lions roster after this mock draft, what it could look like. But this is a guy that can take a little bit of time settling into the NFL, but the upside here I think is just undeniable. It's not all there right now, but the upfield acceleration, you notice that. The way that he builds up force into contact is just absolutely disgusting. The long arm upside, the bull rush upside, his ability to still create leverage as big as he is with that length to really just knock back offensive linemen. He's not all the way there right now. I mean, sometimes his step off the line of scrimmage is inconsistent. You'll get some really late steps off the line of scrimmage. Sometimes he'll even start by taking his foot and stepping back before just jumping off the line. It's usually different though based on his alignment. As a run defender as well, off the backside, his range is disgusting. That's the word that keep coming to mind. It's like, this is disgusting. The amount of ground that he can travel and the range that he has as a tackler is absolutely nasty. However, with that being said, as a run defender, I don't think he does himself consistently favors by recognizing the blocking scheme, putting himself in good situations. You get some hits and misses there in terms of making sure that he consistently gets out on the edge, forces plays back inside. Sometimes he's a little bit behind. I don't think his hands and feet are always on a string at the same time here, especially as a run defender, but that shows up as both a pass rusher and a run defender. However, again, it's the upside. The ability to really squeeze the pocket from the top of the pass rush is probably the thing that I like most about his game. Tip his shoulder into an offensive lineman, squeeze the top of the pocket without giving up ground and allowing tackles to just kind of push him out of the pocket is my favorite thing probably about his game right now as a pass rusher. It's not the cleanest thing at this point in time. I think as a stunt pass rusher, you see some pacing issues, and it's like he's kind of running himself into a block without allowing himself to actually make a pass rush move. The hand placement can get a little bit high as a bull rusher. Like, it's not perfect right now. It's not. But the Lions, again, are in a situation because of all the guys that they have under contract where there's capable to not ask him to be like, he has to be the guy all the snaps right now because we need it right now. We do have some guys there that can help him out and kind of, you know, get him into the league, but also take some pressure off of him. And then as he molds into just an absolute animal, that duo for the future is going to be disgusting between him and Aiden Hutchinson. So that's who we have with the 6th pick in the 2023 NFL Draft. Now, moving on to the 2nd pick, these are where things get wild. So the Detroit Lions hold the 18th pick in the 1st round with their 2nd pick in this draft. But this is where I was like, you know what? I want to get fun with it. I want to get creative with this. And if you know, like I did in the last one, use Pro Football Focus and their mock draft simulator. So they're going to give you like trade options. And I try not to overdo it, especially when I do mocks. I don't like making tons of trades because it's not about maybe being realistic, because I know trades are probably going to happen. The Lions have moved a ton. Would I have anticipated, like I said, us to go from 32 to 12 with the divisional team last year? No, but we did it. So it's not about being realistic as much as it is just, I think when you overdo it, it's kind of like, okay, we're all over the place. Or if I'm doing that, I almost feel like I don't know enough players, because then I'm just trying to get the same players over and over. And that's not a terrible thing. You like who you like, but at the same time, it's like I need to know a variety of guys. So at this 18th pick, it comes up with a list of teams that are interested, and there was one team that was interested of multiple teams, which was the New Orleans Saints. Now, obviously, the connections come to mind, so I'm thinking, okay, I mean, maybe this is something we can consider here. They have the 29th pick in the draft, but there's something that also stuck with me. And I'm going to sit on that in a second. But either way, the Saints had the 29th pick at the 1st round. They were one of the teams that showed up as being interested in this pick. Now, looking into the Saints, because I really wanted to make it feel realistic of like, okay, who could actually legitimately be interested in trading up beyond just the PFF simulator? There's been people out there saying that the Saints should move up. It's something that they've done. They did in the past for Marcus Davenport in a similar position in the draft, moving up to a similar spot. They moved up to 14 for Davenport. They'd be moving up in this case from 29 to 18. They need a defensive lineman. It is really light there right now on who's under contract, especially in the interior. And as you guys know, it gets light after Jalen Carter, especially when you're looking if you want some size at that spot. So I don't know if this is something the Saints realistically would want to do, but I was like, hey, it could actually happen. The Saints could actually do something like this. And then to make it even more crazy, here you go. These are, hey, look, it's a mock draft, but I thought it was kind of a fun idea. And look, I like this guy, okay? So no hate to him. I really like this guy, and I'm hoping for the best. But the idea had to come up here. Now you can trade players in PFF. So looking at the Saints situation, Alvin Kamara looks like he's probably going to be suspended there. We don't know what the future is with him in the New Orleans Saints, and that would make you think that they're going to draft a running back. But I was like, what if I traded them DeAndre Swift? You know, what if I traded them Swift? Now, for the Lions' sake, if they could do this, if you are going to trade him, this would be the best time to probably do it because he only has 1 year left on his deal. And then after that, you really wouldn't get anything for him unless he signed a nice deal on the market. And then obviously got a comp pick. Maybe something like that potentially happens. But otherwise, you're going to be having him walk unless you re-sign him. And I don't know if that's going to happen. So I was like, okay, Saints may not have a running back right away. They may want that. And it's Alvin Kamara. I'm not saying Swift is Kamara, but skill set wise, he does bring some skills that Kamara can bring as well to the table. So I threw DeAndre Swift into the deal. So here's the deal that we came up with for this PFF mock draft. The New Orleans Saints are going to get pick number 18, DeAndre Swift, pick 183 from the Detroit Lions this year. And again, I try to use the draft trade chart to try to really line the numbers up here, but Swift kind of throws it off because I don't think he would have too much value in terms of trade value. That's, you know, kind of why I'm throwing it into this, but at the same time, I don't know what that would equal out to or how a team would feel about it. So I did the best that I could with this one. But in return, I received pick number 29, so I moved from 18 to 29. I received their 3rd round pick this year, which is pick 71. And why I'm giving up pick 183 is because I'm swapping my 6th round pick with their 5th round pick. So a late round swap of this year, plus an additional 2024 4th round pick as well. They don't have a 3rd round pick. They only have a 2nd round pick. So yeah, I mean, this could be more. You could say it's too much. It's not enough. I mean, I don't know exactly, but that's what I wanted. So that's the trade that I made. So boom, I moved back to pick number 29 in this draft. Now notice I stayed in the 1st round. And here's the thing that stuck with me. After making my last mock draft video, one thing that stuck with me is when I took a quarterback in the 2nd round. And I think it makes sense on the surface. You know, the view of that, taking a quarterback in the 2nd round is much different than taking one in the 1st round. However, with that being said, PFF also changed up their simulator. That value goes a lot higher now. But with that being said, I didn't love it in the back of my mind because I don't have a 5th year option. I would love to have a 5th year option if possible. If I'm going to do it in the 2nd round, I was like, I might as well just have a 5th year option. And trust me, I watched a lot of quarterbacks for making this mock draft, and I'm going to do others with different guys. But this is where you get the one repeat. If you saw the last video, you know who this is. At pick 29, the Detroit Lions select quarterback Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee. Now, again, I think the idea of taking it in round 1 is not as, it doesn't look as great on the surface as doing it in round 2. As a guy that really likes Jared Goff, believes we can win the Super Bowl with Jared Goff. If I'm going to do it, though, in the 2nd round, and that's how the simulator plays out, because I have to play the simulator because that's what I'm utilizing, because otherwise I won't get the players that I want. If I'm going to do that, and I can also get a 5th year option on top of it, why would I not? And also, I did of course weigh who was available at that spot as well, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to take him here because, 1, I don't know if he's going to get to 48 based on how the simulator goes, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to sit and wait, and 2, if I still have the 1st round pick, it's 29, and also you got to think from the perspective of at pick 18, some teams may not even have a guy that they have graded as a 1st round pick, so they may feel flexibility. Other teams may be right at the tail end, like the Saints, and could be like, hey, there's our guy in the 1st round, we got to go get him before we're going to get him. It's a weird spot. A lot of times you don't have that many players as those types of grades. So I move back to 29 and I take Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee, keeping the 5th year option on the quarterback. Trust me, I'm going to give you guys different names, but for this video, I went through a lot of guys for this one, but for this video, I'm going to stay because I think it just makes sense based on the trade to go with the same player in this sense. I won't go too much into him because I spoke about him more in last video, and I'm going to have a draft profile up on DoseOfDion.com here soon if it's not already. But with that being said, Hendon Hooker, we know he's older. He's coming off an ACL tear. He's 25 years old, but he definitely has the tools to size, good athleticism, protects the football specifically as a passer. And I think the biggest thing, you know, because I wanted to make this clear, last video I talked about kind of as a robot in terms of he puts the football. But with that being said, I want to give him credit and make it sound a little bit different, as I don't say robot in terms of his throwing motion, okay? There's a lot of guys that you watch which kind of look a little bit robotic when they're throwing it. It is a very fluid motion with Hendon Hooker, consistent motion with Hendon Hooker, which I think definitely gives him upside as an accurate passer, because you get a lot of the same motion, very fluid, very smooth. It doesn't look like it's forced. It's not like choppy. So I want to give him credit in that sense because I know it kind of sounded weird the last way that I put it. We take a developmental quarterback here. As I said in the last one, hey, worst case, maybe he's a high-end backup. And look, the Packers did something similar here with Jordan Love, and it took a long time before it looks like now they're going to end up going to Jordan Love. I like Jared Goff. You guys, if I'm following the channel, if you don't know, I'm a big Goff guy. I believe we can win the whole thing with him. So if we didn't take a quarterback in the draft, I'd be like, hey, that's cool. I like Jared Goff. But I am going to take Hendon Hooker here to keep that 5th-year option because I think it just makes sense based on where I'm now at in the draft. With that being said, though, I just traded away DeAndre Swift, and I was going to try to get a replacement anyway in this draft, so now there's some urgency to that, and to just keep it fun, because why not? We've already made one move, why not make another? So the next Alliance pick was originally scheduled to be at pick number 48 in the 2nd round, but because I wanted to make sure that I didn't lose out on a player that I feel like could replace DeAndre Swift and a lot of what we're losing there and what we love for him in our offense, and to be a very easy transition replacement, I decided to move up with the Atlanta Falcons as he was still available. Again, I'm trying to take guys that I really like, so Atlanta's sitting there at pick 44, only 4 spots up, and just to keep it simple, I was like, you know what, I'm going to give them my future 4th, next year's 4th round pick that I basically just got from the New Orleans Saints. That way it's not like I'm giving up something that's original picks for future years. So all I did was give him that future 4th round pick that I just acquired in my previous trade to move up 4 spots to make sure that I landed this guy, specifically because Green Bay picks at 45, and I think it's funny if I can jump ahead of them and take the guy that maybe they want. I don't know, but they could use that. At pick number 44, the Detroit Lions now select running back Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama. That's right. So here is now going to be our DeAndre Swift replacement. We reset the years on his contract. This is 2nd round picks. So there's no 5th-year option. But Jahmyr Gibbs, a guy that I was going through a lot yesterday watching him, it's very easy to see the speed. I mean, the way that he can get to the edge with ease, how smooth it is. His acceleration is disgusting. Whether that he has the ability to kind of squeeze into small holes amongst the line of scrimmage, and the willingness to also run some inside runs, inside zones, sometimes some power plays as well with that. But it's just nasty acceleration. The ability to hit 0 to 60 is disgusting. You see it especially on like screens, things like that. I think one of the biggest impacts he will bring is the pass game side, and that's something that's huge that I'd be losing here with DeAndre Swift, is the passing game side. He had 44 receptions this past season, very soft hands. He looks like a very consistent passer. All the games that I went through, didn't know one drop on the guy. Now, his route tree wasn't very deep. Sometimes he split out wide and run like a curl route, but it was, other than that, it was like a flat or it was an arrow route or a couple screens were thrown in there. But I didn't see him drop anything. Saw him make a couple contested catches, had a broken play that he scored for a touchdown against Texas. So I thought, if anything, my only concern there with pass catching, I didn't see a drop, but he does kind of sort of get a tendency to start to peak before he actually secures the ball completely. Something to keep an eye on for sure. Brings that. Also, I didn't love how much he was kind of stumbling out of his breaks when he was trying to run an arrow route. It was almost like, dude, calm down. Run it with some pace. You don't have to run it at 100 miles per hour the whole way through. So make sure you stay on your feet because you're not an option if you're falling on the ground coming out of your break every time. Clearly not a short down yardage back. You're not going to use this guy on 3rd and short. He's not consistently running through arm tackles, and sometimes I think some of that he doesn't always has the best leverage into it. With that being said, I also noted he could get a little bit impatient when he saw daylight, when he got into space, following screens, not allowing his blocks to set up. But with all that being said, he had that home run capability. He was an outside threat, which is going to be something different than David Montgomery. I don't know if he's like you want him in all situations, but he's a really nice number 2, and he just brings you something completely different from David Montgomery. And then the pass protection as well. I'm going to still have to continue to watch there. I thought the biggest thing for him is he got tunnel vision. He got tunnel vision onto what he may have thought he saw and not scanning post-snap necessarily, and then he leaves a free rusher. He was willing to block, but I don't know how high the upside is there because his frame doesn't necessarily account for a lot of upside. So I didn't think he was like the perfect running back prospect by any stretch. But with that being said, after now just trading away DeAndre Swift and seeing that this guy was still available and the Packers were about to pick, I was like, dude, I'm going to move up. I'm going to take him, make sure Green Bay doesn't get him. I don't know if they would or not. And that'll be my direct placement. And it kind of just works out perfectly, I guess, the move that we're making. So now that moves us on to an original pick for the Detroit Lions. Getting out of some of the trade craziness, at pick number 55, continuing in the 2nd round, we keep our second round pick. The Detroit Lions select, I should have looked up how to say this guy's name. I should have done that. I don't know why I did not. I'm gonna guess on this one. I know how to say the other guys' names. I don't know about this one. Tooley Pulotu? Tui Pulotu. Okay, that actually sounds right. This is the defensive end out of USC, 6'3", basically 265 pounds. Now, USC, all their sites and things like that will list him at 290. He doesn't look 290, so I don't think he was that size. I did hear something that I thought was a little bit concerning, that reportedly he was that same size when he came out of high school, so that's something I think the Lions will have to keep an eye on with a guy like this, is can he add to his frame? I mean, we've reportedly seen that happen. For example, you go back to his freshman season in 2020, you saw him against First game I watched was Oregon from 2020, and he was playing a lot of that 3-tech role much more in the B gap. But since that time, he really played a lot more on the edge. And even when he was asked about this at the combine, he's like, look, I'll play anywhere, inside, outside, put on weight, lose weight. But I do have a lot of my experience at edge. And right now, he does have a lot of experience at edge. But I'm almost taking more of a shot on this to say, look, put on some weight. You're going to be our 3-tech because you've hung there as a freshman, and even though you didn't stay in that role super long, you did start in 3 games that season. One thing that separates him from a lot of prospects, number one, is he's very young. Very young. He's only 20 years old. So I do believe that he could add weight to his frame, push him inside if you want to. I don't really need another edge at this point, especially this high. But I do believe that you could add to his frame and he could stick inside. Again, I said I wanted to draft players that I really like. This is one of those players that I just really like. I know it's a projection because you're asking him to put on some weight and do something that he hasn't really done much since 2020. Outside of that, he's been moved around a lot, but really just living on the edge. However, I don't know if his length and some of his athleticism would make that even the best spot for him. I think on the inside, he could be a really big problem for a lot of teams. It just may take a little bit of time because it is a little bit of a transition there, and you'll see how this draft continues. But with that being said, I just really like the player. The ability to shed blocks at such a high level in so many different ways. He's super crafty at the top of his pass rush. You see it right now from the edge position, the quickness that he has, the shake that he has. I think it's something that can translate. I think he has a good first step off the line, even off the edge, but could look even better as he's pushed, if he gets pushed towards the interior, like in this situation. He has the ability to convert speed to power, create bull rush. He has the shake. He has just so many ways to win as a pass rusher, and as a run defender, he gets off blocks so quickly. He can spin off. He seems to have a nose for the football, just kind of like always knows where it is. See what I did there? He always knows where it is. He does seem to always know where the ball is. Now, as a run defender, one pushback to that is I thought sometimes he just kind of did his own thing. Specifically off the backside, you would see it. Like, if he knew the run was going away from him, knocking him off, he might dive inside and actually lose his contain. And then if a cutback came his way, he'd be stuck inside. So he could kind of just get caught doing his own thing and not playing his lane, just trying to sniff out the football. But also, some of that also leads to the insane production that he had this past season. For a guy this young, this big, this athletic, and at the same time had this past season 13 sacks. You see the pass rush win rate. I mean, it's like, okay, there is some knockback to that, but at the same time, I just love how the guy plays, and I love the youth of the player as well. Just knows how to get off blocks. So at pick number 55, I'm taking him. The vision here is I'm going to push him in at 3-tech. Of course, I haven't got that yet, but I do believe, and I've said this to you guys, that is our biggest need coming into the draft. It's our most clear need, is we still need to find that long-term 3-tech, and I think this could end up being that player. I guess worst case, if you're like, oh, it's not working, you could find different spots for him because he actually proven with USC he can play across the line of scrimmage. So you could find a different spot for him, but that's kind of the vision with this draft pick. That's my vision with making this move is, hey, we're going to put on some weight and then we're going to stick inside. And I think he's going to be capable of doing that so young. Now that continues us on to round number 3, and at pick number 71, which I acquired from that first trade that I made with the New Orleans Saints, it is a 3rd round pick, so obviously this changes up the cap a little bit. But with pick number 71, the Detroit Lions select wide receiver A.T. Perry out of Wake Forest. Now this seems to happen all the time, right? Where you get a guy like once a year that'll come out and you're like, oh man, that guy, he just makes sense. This feels like one of those picks, and I'm not sure how I feel when I get closer to the draft, but it would not shock me if it's draft time, I'm sitting there and this is one of my predictions that the Lions actually make a pick like this, because he just seems to fit. It just seems to make all the sense in the world to draft a player like this, especially if you're going to do it within day 2 before you get to day 3. This guy just seems to make so much sense because, number one, obviously the physical side of it, 6'3", almost 200 pounds. He has the build of a pure outside receiver, and as I said before, I don't love the depth, or excuse me, I would say more of the top end at the outside receiver within this draft, but then he also brings the speed factor, the ability to stretch the field. The guy ran a 4.47 40, 35-inch vertical, 1.59 10-yard split. He brings that ability as well, tied along with the size. But when you watch A.T. Perry, he's really easy to like. I mean, at first I was like, man, is it him? Is it Rashee Rice? And now it's like, okay, I don't even see that being that close. I really think A.T. Perry's the better player, especially for just who the Lions are and what the Lions may be looking for here. They got Marvin Jones Jr. on a 1-year deal, of course, but this is going to be the future on the outside across from a guy like Jameis Williams. That can only stretch the field, but can be a reliable pass catcher. I didn't note a lot of drops. He's been noted for that. The 5 games that I went through, I didn't really note any drops, I don't think. The ease of which it seems he's able to create separation. One thing that with our last video, the guy that I said I thought sometimes he put himself into coverage. This guy, I think, just easy create separation. The way that he kind of craftiness, he lulls defenders to sleep before breaking into a lot of double move routes. The lean at the top of the route, right? Kind of some of the savvy there to create separation at the top of the route. Also in the press, he shows press balance and also ready hands to combat at the press, the ease of acceleration, and he's got a little bit after the catch that he can do too. He's got a little stiff arm, he's got a little urgency. I just think it makes sense. The build, the size, it just seems to make sense that this kind of guy would be a Lions fit. Obviously, the production that he put up. So A.T. Perry is the pick. He's a little bit older at 71. Pick number 81, the Detroit Lions select defensive tackle Zach Pickens out of South Carolina. Now, here's where things got a little bit wild. So, outside of the trades, this is probably not the draft pick that I'm making if I'm just saying, okay, what are our needs? What does our roster consist of? Okay, I would have went a different route here with either tight end or like linebacker, something that I haven't got yet. But again, I was trying to do that. I was really trying to draft the players that I really liked. And having that extra third-round pick where I took the receiver, I guess in a sense it did something different than a lot of my mock drafts because I usually don't have this extra pick to kind of work with in the mid-rounds. So after taking the receiver and looking at who's available, I told you guys I wanted to get different names, so I wasn't going to take Schoonmaker again like I did in the last video. So I wanted to go a different route with this draft pick. So I sat there, I was thinking about it, and man, this guy's just sitting there. He's available. He's sticking out like a sore thumb. And the biggest issue I have is this one is trying to fit him into our defense because I'm like, man, do we have too many defensive linemen? Maybe. I'll show you what it looks like at the end of the video. But he's just sitting there. How do I not take him? I love this prospect, man. That is Zach Pickens, 6'3", basically 300 pounds, and man, this guy can play. And you saw it at the Senior Bowl specifically. You're like, okay, you see the flash from this guy. He's a really nice athlete, almost top 5 in pretty much every category at the combine of numbers that he posted. So he's a really good athlete across the board. I think he brings immediate flexibility that a guy that could play 3-tech, kind of like Bugs, but a little bit different, but also could kind of play the Ali McNeil role, back him up, but has flexibility across the D-line. He's got the good first step quickness that is something that the Lions have been looking for with their last guys, Ali McNeil, Levi. They've all had this. I wouldn't say to the Levi extent, but he has that first step quickness, I think, almost similarly to a guy like Ali McNeil to get off the line of scrimmage, position himself well. He plays with quick hands, a consistent base, which allows him to reset, and the ability to crack an edge. But I think the consistency of handling the combo double team blocks is the area where I need to see the most improvement, whether that's sitting down in his base a little bit more into that contact, being prepared for it. It's probably the spot that I need to see more improvement because the body type suggests that he would be better in those spots, but right now too often he gets pushed back and then he's disengaging because he can really separate, but it's 3-4 yards back. I love the way that he's able to play the run, get his hands on first a lot of the time, and then shed off of that. Like, this player just seems to fit a lot schematically for the Lions, and I think especially if you allow him to play a little more upfield, you could see even more splash of a player in pass rush. And then again, when you watched him at the Senior Bowl one-on-ones and you had him matched up with a guy like Steve Avila out of TCU, it seems like he's going to be a pretty high pick. He bull rushed this guy back, and that's something that a little bit of a question if he's going to be able to do it at the NFL level. Avila is almost impossible for anybody to bull rush. He has some of the best anchors in the class. This guy just ran him back. So this is a player that's inconsistent right now, but the flashes are there. The athleticism is there. I like the way he plays. We're talking about a former 5-star. The size is great for the Lions defense. He could plug in and play kind of the one gap and control like the Lions played last year, but he also has the quickness to be a little more aggressive upfield if the Lions want to do that as well. He's got different ways to win, swim move, get his hands on first. I like that he has the ability to play the run. He just needs to be a little bit more consistent at this point in time. But with the transition that I'm making, as I said, with a guy like Tooley, having a guy like Zach Pickens could, I think, give me some time as well. And then again, I'll break it down a little bit more to what our roster looks like. But for now, Zach Pickens is the pick at 81. I know it doesn't seem to make a ton of sense because you're like, well, wait a minute, we need this and that. Look, point is, I'm taking players that I like Zach Pickens. That's who I'm taking. All right, continuing on. Now we're into day number 3, and we have another pick that I got from the New Orleans Saints. This was in that pick swap. So basically, I essentially moved up like 37 spots, something like that, top of my head with the Saints by swapping 183 for 146. I didn't really have a reason to do it. I was just like, hey, I kind of want to swap picks and get a higher pick than that. Yeah, it's going to cost a little bit more for the salary cap, but the Lions have salary cap space, 1, because of the money that they've created, but 2, on top of that, it's also at the same time, it's a pretty big gap. Like, it's a massive gap. So going up about 35 spots, even though it's in day 3 and the cost we'll look at is much less, it is a pretty massive gap. And I like to have a little more control over who I want to get at these spots. Maybe someone slips through. So with that being said, at pick number 146, I decided not to move. I stood still and I select cornerback Terrell Smith out of Minnesota. Now, I went back and forth between him and another guy. I'm not going to say his name because he could be in another mock draft, but that I really like. I might like the other guy a little bit more, but I don't know if I like him as much for our scheme. I leaned this way because of the scheme. Terrell Smith, I think, is a guy that, just look at the build. 6'1", 200 pounds. He's got a thick build, low to the ground, disciplined pad level in zone, press. A lot of press man, a lot of off man. Athletically, he tested off the chart. 4'4", 140, 34-inch vertical, 14 bench press reps, 1.5, 110-yard split. He tested incredibly well. He just doesn't have a lot of ball production, which I think is the thing that's probably going to hurt him the most. You can see the stats there on the screen. He left a lot of dropped interceptions out there as well, and then you saw the one on Penn State where he gave that touchdown. It was like he was catching nothing on that play. So right now, I think there's a couple things that stand out. First off, getting flipped in press coverage, quick curls, quick hitches, things like that set up on the outside. I think the biggest thing is he really tries to squeeze routes immediately, and he starts to sprint a little bit, gets too far over the route, he could break off routes on him. But the biggest thing, and that's impressed, man, the biggest thing to that is you also see the recovery fluidity, his ability to just kind of flip around and get himself back in a position. It looks so smooth for a guy that's built like that. And I think when you see the corners lines that brought in the Jerry Jacobs, and I know guys like Sutton are maybe not the biggest, but the ability to tackle, right, smart players. Terrell Smith is a very consistent run defender. You can blitz him, you can sit him in underneath zone coverage, and he's going to have the physicality to handle his zone. He's not going to be pushed around like maybe certain other guys that are much more slim, more leggy built. He's a thick, stout cornerback with crazy explosiveness and athleticism that's very consistent in the way that he plays. The play strength he has a blister, his ability to force fumbles, and then his fluidity to break and limit yak, just be a clean tackler. Now, there's some little things within his game. I think the speed is noticeable on like drags, things like that. I think you can communicate a little bit better. He could, just to kind of allow people to know where he's going to be. But it's getting flipped around a press. It's that consistently, I think, pops up in his game. I think he could be a little bit more with his head on a swivel to be a little bit more of a playmaker winning underneath zone. I mean, he's not like the most fluid in terms of quickness laterally, but at the same time, I think he could be a little bit more aware to help himself out. But his man coverage and press coverage background is the reason I liked it, because I think it just fits schematically with the Lions here. He's also got pretty good arm length, over 32-inch arms as well. So at this point in time, his ability to play within our scheme is something that I loved, and you also just love the physicality that he plays with. So that's actually the reason I leaned this way. We know cornerbacks is very scheme dependent, and I think he fits in if the Lions do something similar to what they've been doing. So Terrell Smith is the pick at 146. Get a developmental, even though he's a redshirt senior, still a guy that with a little bit of things polished up, he could take off in the NFL, because there's really not a lot lacking for him physically or athletically. There's not a lot of limitations they're ever going to have to really work around there. So the upside's huge, especially at a day 3 pick. Moves you on to pick number 152, and I believe this was an original pick for the Lions in round number 5. And at this pick, I've tried to go with different names. Like I said, I could have easily went with the exact same guy that I drafted last time, because actually PFF added him to their simulator. I won't say the name, but we brought him up last video, and PFF added him, so I know they're watching the videos. This pick, I went with the same position, basically, and I select offensive tackle / guard Nick Aldivari. Again, I don't know if I'm saying his name right. I apologize. The all 22 don't have sound, so I'm just like watching the player. But this is an offensive tackle out of Old Dominion. See it, 6'6", 318. Maybe the Lions could draft him and say, hey, we want him as backup tackle. And I'm still not sure how I feel about this one, because I would like to get a guard for the future potentially here. But if you draft one at day 3, there's really no guarantee that just because you drafted a guard that next year he's gonna be ready to start. It's a day 3 pick. So there's that side. And I think we're good for this year with Glasgow and also having Big V. But then there's also the side of me as well that I'm not sure about backup tackle. Being as a UDFA last year, definitely needs to take massive strides. Hopefully he does. They know more than I do. But then there's also on top of that the Matt Nelson coming back. So I don't know if I feel great about backup tackle either. Well, Nick could potentially play both for the Lions, but I think he'll actually be pushed into guard. I know his size doesn't look like that, but I think a team could definitely view him as a guard. The thing that I didn't love is the drive blocking upside here, the ability to consistently get leverage and kind of push guys back. But I thought you did see a guy that was feisty, but his pass protection in terms of reactive athleticism was something that stands out amongst most offensive linemen at this spot in the draft. The ability to counter with pass rush moves, move his feet, not have to lunge into contact, specifically from the tackle position. His length probably won't be great for a tackle, which is why I think partly he'll push into guard, and being able to play different spots is great. He even took snaps at center at the Senior Bowl, and he showed some of that off. Like, the guy can definitely sit down and anchor. That's true, but for him, the biggest thing is his hands are inconsistent at this point in time, and I think his hands also drop to his waist when he changes direction. So, especially from guards, going to be less ground to travel, but he needs to keep his hands up, because when he does that, he opens up easy bull rush opportunities, and that's already going to be a weakness for him. So, with that being said, I took a developmental potentially guard here here, maybe even tackle as well, out of Old Dominion, that played a couple of big schools, Virginia and Virginia Tech last year. I thought he held his own. Actually, I think it was against Virginia that he played right guard in that game. So he has a few snaps there, hasn't taken a majority of the snaps there. Most of them have been at right tackle, but at the same time, he's taken a few there. And then finally, at pick number 194, the final pick, I guess this is kind of like the same player we talked about before, but I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm going to do it because I think it makes sense. I want to take players that I like, so I did. At 194, the Detroit Lions select tight end Blake Whiteheart. Yeah, I'm actually just going to use the exact same graphic that I used for the video when we talked about this player. It was our last video talking about late/undrafted players, and I think according to their mock, he may have been undrafted anyway, but he's sitting there, and I was like, I don't want to risk it because I'm not doing undrafted free agents anyway, so I'm just going to take him. 6'3", 247. As I said, I think if you believe that his frame can get stronger and he can build some lower strength in the lower body, this guy could be a very complete type of tight end. Now, again, I could have taken one earlier, and we will in future mocks, I'm sure. But with that being said, I still like this player a lot, and I think that this is a guy that brings something different from James Mitchell. He is a competitor. He is gritty as heck. He is absolutely this, so I can see why the Lions would fall in love with that. The toughness that he showcases, and then also the ability to attack the seams, open it up. He's got a good 40 time. He ran a sub 4.7 40. Like, the guy can run and move a little bit, and then also the ability to move around, play as a move blocker, block in space, or also sit in line. It's just the biggest thing of putting in and packing a little bit more punch to his game. And then also there's going to be limitations because he's not the most agile athlete or the most creative off script. He's not that, but he is a guy that can attack the seams, give you something a little bit different there, give you some height, of course, but also specifically be a nice blocker, run blocking and upside pass protector, which I think always could get better at. So he's got inline and slot potential here, and I'm going to pair him up potentially with him and James Mitchell for the future. So that is your Detroit Lions mock draft 3.0 with trades. I know this was all over the place, and probably the burning question you have is, okay, this is all great, this is fantastic, but maybe you don't think it's fantastic, but what the heck does the Lions roster look like with this? I mean, we got too many defensive linemen. Well, that's a great question because I really had to consider this. Even though I didn't want to worry about the position too much, I had to consider it because there is a point of taking too many in one position, and that matters. So here's an idea or an example of what the Lions defense or team look like with this mock draft included. Again, assuming everybody makes the team and no injuries or anything on this. So here you go. Now, this is 54 players. Okay, we got to get to 53. This is technically 54 players for the Lions here. So one of these guys would have to not be on the team. Maybe someone hits IR. I mean, that usually happens. Unfortunately, someone gets cut here. Okay, maybe someone else on this list that doesn't make it. I have 3 quarterbacks on the roster because I think that'll probably happen with Hooker because of his injury. But, you know, there's going to be a spot that's going to easily open up here. Somewhere you either at the one open a spot or there's an injury, which will probably unfortunately be the case. I know defense line has a lot. You got Levi, McNeil, Pascal, Kaminsky, now Pickens, Tooley, Buggs. The biggest issue that I had with Pickens is I'm drafting him, and I'm drafting also Tooley to be my 3 tech. Ali McNeil's not going to lose the starting role. But you also have to keep this in mind. I thought about this. Buggs does have a very clear out after this year. I love Isaiah Buggs, but he does have a very clear out after this year. And both those guys are still inconsistent. So if he does really well, then Buggs, there is an out next year where you could go a different direction. On top of that, I think it also fits into exactly what Dan Campbell said. He wants to raise basically the floor. And dude, to me, this defensive line is disgusting. When you just look at the names there, I don't see weaknesses. I really don't see weaknesses. Now, this is also, you know, like, you see there's no Julian Okwara, because I guess technically in this sense he would be cut. Like, you are missing Benito Jones, right? I guess would be cut because I had to fill the numbers down. So I'm not sure, like, how this would all shake itself out. But I think the floor has definitely been raised. Like, this is nasty in my opinion. You know, you start at Lee McNeil, and then you could potentially have Tooley as your 3 tech. If he's not there or the size didn't work or he's not ready yet, Pickens can rotate in and out, play multiple spots. Isaiah Buggs is kind of your, like, fallback. You always have him as well, who can play different spots. He's still a young guy. Levi, obviously, if he can step in and he can be healthy. If Levi was who we thought he was when we drafted him, if he got healthy and that all worked out perfectly, forget it. We'll move Tooley back to edge. We'll find a spot for him. We'll make him a 5 tech. I know his length isn't great. It's probably not ideal, but we'll find a spot for him. You know, we'll figure that out. Don't worry about that. And then Pickens is absolutely great depth at that point in time. Great rotational defensive lineman. You can never have enough of that. You never have pass rushers. The edge rusher position looks nasty. Romeo, Hutchinson, right? Romeo's only got the 1 year left. And after they redid his deal, Charles only has 1 year left. Houston's technically a free agent next year, even though he's an exclusive rights one. But now Hutchinson and Tyree's your future. I get I didn't hit linebacker, but this is not unheard of. Rams in 2020 came in with 3 off-ball linebackers. It's not unheard of. Aaron Glenn said it. You build the defense to the defensive line and the cornerback position. Well, that's where the emphasis went. Play a lot of 4-2-5, a lot of nickel sets. That's what teams are majority in. 75% of the time you're in nickel sets. So you're mainly leaning on D linemen and cornerbacks and secondary players. So you have the flexibility, obviously, at safety. Cornerback has a new guy added to that list. At this point in time with Terrell Smith. And then at linebacker, he felt like it was a strength. I like the linebackers. I know if I'm drafting a linebacker, he's coming in to be a backup. The only thing that I hate here is I didn't get a guy that I felt like was a better matchup piece with tight ends. But I do feel like that's Iffy's role. And if that's not Iffy's role, I don't know what Iffy's role is when everybody's healthy. And then, of course, offensively, again, I just really like what we got here. I mean, Gibbs, Montgomery, that duo is going to be nasty. Montgomery's got 3 years on his deal. Gibbs will have 4, so that's a future duo for multiple seasons. The wide receiver position, you got your future outside with Jameson Williams going forward. That's nice. You got a combination with Mitchell in this case. I really just like how this all played out. So I know it feels like overkill maybe, but it's just another mock draft. With that being said, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.